All signs point to Josh Allen having a new center in 2026. We're going to break it all down right now on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. Tim Graham of The Athletic put out an article on Wednesday morning sharing a lot of information about Bills center Connor McGovern, and it certainly looks like his days in Buffalo are over. And I would encourage you to read the article for yourself. It is linked in today's show notes. But I want to share some of the highlights, things we learned, and then tell you my thoughts. But Connor McGovern pretty much came out and said that he feels like his time in Buffalo is over and done. He shared that the Bills have not had contact with him since his exit interview, which happens right after the season. Tim Graham shared on social media that the exit interview was with Brandon Beane and Aaron Cromer. I would guess there was some conversation about his future. Connor McGovern shared on the Cover One film room last year that there was discussions about a contract extension in the past. But per McGovern, there's not been contact since the exit interview. McGovern shared that there's a number in his head that he would accept in terms of a contract and not talk to anyone else. Doesn't sound like that's been offered to him. It does sound like he is motivated by money in terms of what's a priority for him in his next contract. And even talked about going back to guard, and as long as it was, fair market value, he'd be willing to do it. I don't think that would be the case in Buffalo, but just generally about his approach to free agency. I think he'll have plenty of opportunities to play center where he's said repeatedly it's his natural position. He also shared that he played through some big-time injuries in Week 5, the loss to the Patriots. Connor McGovern tore ligaments and broke a knuckle in his right hand, but of course played through it and didn't have one single bad snap to show for that. Oh, by the way, he tore his triceps in Week 13 and played through that. And one of the cool things about Connor McGovern has been his availability. And now you know that the availability has come with pain, playing through a lot of pain, I'm sure. I mean, a broken knuckle and torn ligaments in your snapping hand, didn't miss any time. Obviously, he's had a couple of great seasons for the Bills at center. Has not allowed a single sack and has only allowed 2 quarterback hits over the last 2 seasons. He's a good football player. That appears to be on his way out in Buffalo. And it puts the Bills in a interesting spot. I mean, obviously, we can't completely dismiss it until he agrees to terms with a new team. Something could happen over the weekend. There's a chance. It doesn't feel like he'll be back, but there's a chance. And so this has me thinking a lot about, all right, well, where do the Bills go from here? Transitioning the center position. Of course, Sedrick Van Pran-Granger, a 5th-round pick from a couple of years ago, would be great for him to be able to step in and do the job. That's a bit of a roll of the dice, right? To hand it over to a day 3 pick that has only played in games that were either out of hand or not necessary to win. I like the pedigree. There's a lot I like about Sedrick Van Pran-Granger, but that'd be a roll of the dice. I do like that he has been part of the mix, and so there should be some familiarity with Josh and the communication and some of the pieces of the offensive line. That should be helpful. But it's a big step. It would be great because the Bills need like some hits like that. It would be great for Brandon Beane to have found a good starting center in the 5th round. So we'll see where that goes. I figure that he'll be in the mix, but this center landscape across the NFL is very interesting to me. I think there's a ton of need for the center position across the NFL. And that need got even bigger when Chicago Bears center Drew Dalman announced his retirement on Tuesday. That was extremely unexpected. He's 27 years old. He just signed a contract with Chicago last offseason that paid him $17 million a season. He had a great year. He played well. Up-and-coming football team, it certainly appears, in Chicago, and he's hanging it up. And ultimately, that means there's another team that needs a starting center. I currently have 9 teams that I don't believe have their starting center under contract. The Bills, unless it's Sedrick Van Pran-Granger or maybe Alec Anderson. The Bears, the Ravens, the Browns, the Lions, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Titans. Meanwhile, I could see teams like the Patriots, Giants, Rams, and Commanders looking to upgrade their center position. And so, of course, the marquee name in free agency for centers is Tyler Linderbaum from the Baltimore Ravens. And it certainly feels like he's going to get away from Baltimore, and he'll probably go to one of the teams I just said. Whatever team's willing to pay him north of $20 million a season. And then it's Connor McGovern. I think he's comfortably the second best center on the market. There's a lot of need. He's going to find what he's looking for. And that puts the Bills in this spot where they're in need of an answer. And again, maybe that answer is Sedrick Van Pran-Granger, but as I said, I guess it was a week or so ago when I previewed free agent centers, you have to have competition for Sedrick Van Pran-Granger. He's going to have to earn that. And I discussed some of the ideas that I had for players that could come in and compete, maybe win the job, at a minimum be a good reserve at center, and then, of course, you want that flexibility to play guard as well. I talked about Ryan Bates. That one makes a lot of sense to me. Familiar player, can play center and guard. He just turned 29 years old. Luke Fortner, who was with the Saints last year, he'll turn 28 in May, was a 2-year starter for the Jaguars. Matt Hennessy's very interesting to me. Played last year with the 49ers, was a third-round pick of the Falcons. Looked like he was going to be the guy in Atlanta, which is interesting because he got hurt. Drew Dalman went in, played great, and he got lost in the sauce. Cole Strange is interesting to me. Andre James from the Raiders. So there are some intriguing options out there. And it certainly feels like the Bills are going to have to explore them. I don't know, based on the need across the league, if the Bills are going to be able to get in these bidding wars, if you will, for some of the other names. It's not just Tyler Linderbaum and Connor McGovern. There's other guys out there that are interesting, but a player like Cade Mays, who I thought had a chance to be a mid-level signing, I think his price goes up based on this need. And it's not like this is a class of prospects coming in where there's just all these centers that project as day one starters. So these veterans are going to have a great opportunity, and I think their market is going to be pretty robust. The interior offensive line market at both center and guard has just been booming over the last few years. And so I am calibrating myself to expect Connor McGovern to be out, for Sedrick Van Pran-Granger to be part of that equation with some competition. And we'll see where it goes. And we'll see where it goes with David Edwards, who also figures to get a big old payday on the open market. And I've been kind of saying I think the Bills are preparing to lose at least one, and it certainly feels like there's a momentum for them losing both. And so a lot to figure out for this football team this offseason. We'll see what Brandon Beane gets done. But the plan at center, it's got to be the right one. All right, coming up on the other side of it, the Bills brought back Sam Franklin. I want to talk about that and some of their other special teams things. And they also added a coach to the staff. That's pretty interesting. So we'll dive into that here next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and recognize just how much they carry at work, in relationships and families, and in all the unseen roles they step into every single day. It's easy to celebrate that strength, but it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being. And honestly, that goes for all of us. I think about my wife and how much she pours into our family and our home, and how hard she works to meet the needs of so many things in our household. And the roles we play, the expectations we carry, the pressure we don't always talk about, therapy can help with all of that, creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and supporting your overall well-being. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. All you do is fill out a short questionnaire that'll get you matched with a licensed therapist. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ETHOS.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
All right, folks, welcome back. Want to touch on the Bills re-signing Sam Franklin. So to this point, they brought back Alec Anderson, Fedarian Mathis, and now Sam Franklin has signed a 3-year extension with the Buffalo Bills, a 3-year, $6.49 million contract that includes $2.53 million fully guaranteed. And, of course, Sam Franklin, a special teams ace, turned 30. Was it earlier this year? Yeah, 30 in February 2nd. So he just turned 30 years old. And it's such a clean projection to what he is. Obviously, he was on the team last year, but he has a number of years of high-level special teams impact, which you felt last year for the Buffalo Bills, and they like what they saw, and they wanted to lock him in for 3 years. His 2026 cap hit is $1.74 million. And in seeing some of the reaction to Sam Franklin coming back to Buffalo, there was some disappointment, which I don't fully understand. People making comments about how, oh my goodness, the Bills are tight on cap and they're paying special teams players. That's totally normal behavior in the NFL. Every team values special teams. This is a normal contract for a really good special teams player. And you see some of these special teams guys getting $3-4 million a season. You think about Tyler Matakevich. When he signed his big deal in Buffalo, it was 2 years, $7.1 million. Saron Neal, 3 years, $9 million. This thing comes in at 3 years, $6.5 million. It's a totally normal amount of money to pay to an upper echelon special teams ace. And so he's back. And obviously the Bills have a very experienced special teams coordinator in Jeff Rodgers, and Sam Franklin will be a big part of covering kicks and punts, blocking for kicks and punts. And I don't know that he'll play much on defense. That's obviously not what he provides. There's always players like this that, you got to label him a safety, but ultimately special teams is where they will make their biggest contributions, and they'll play hundreds of snaps per year on special teams. And that's what Sam Franklin's back to do. The Bills will, let me say this. There's nothing that the Bills won't be able to get done because they brought back Sam Franklin. There won't be anything about the receiver position or the pass rush or the offensive line, safety or linebacker that is affected because they gave Sam Franklin a 3-year, $6.49 million deal with a $1.74 million cap hit in 2026. So it's good to have him back. That's a solid move. You need players like this. It does prompt me to think about other special teams needs, and there are a few. Of course, the Bills need a punter. They do not have any punters under contract. The name that I'm paying attention to is Blake Gillikin, who was the punter under Jeff Rodgers in Arizona for a number of years. He's a very good punter. He might actually cost a little money. So maybe that's not the route the Bills want to go. But they could bring back Mitch Wisnowski. They could draft a punter. I think that's probably where I find myself most interested is drafting one that can come in and give you an economic option for 4 years, right? And then you kind of figure it out from there. But it's kind of crazy. Since Brian Moorman, the Bills have just not been able to lock down that next punter that just handles the job for a long time. And so hopefully they can find that guy very soon. They also need a punt returner. I think that's huge. The Bills are like bottom of the league in average yards per punt return. And so it'd be nice to have somebody that is dynamic and takes care of the football there. And then, of course, we'll see what happens at kicker. Of course, Tyler Bass is back under contract, but we need to see what he looks like coming off of the surgery. And then they signed this Maddox Trujillo to a futures contract, so he's part of the mix, but I don't know if either one's going to be the answer. The thing that I've been saying about Tyler Bass is you have a good opportunity to get out of his contract after June 1st. And so get to OTAs in April and May, see what he's like. I mean, see what he's like in June. But ultimately, there is a pathway out of that deal if he's not going to be what you need him to be. But obviously, you need to have a kicker. So hopefully the Bills can get that figured out. Worst case scenario to me, a kicker is you call up Matt Prater and reunite him with Jeff Rodgers, who he was with for a long time, both in Arizona and then his rookie year in Denver, and get him back in the mix for a year. So some things to figure out on special teams, but Sam Franklin secured. The Bills did add a staff member. Trace McSorley is now part of this coaching staff, and he is joining the team as an offensive assistant. You probably remember Trace McSorley from Penn State. He was a quarterback there. An interesting quarterback. Obviously, not a guy that went on to have a huge NFL career, but he was a fun college player. Wound up being a 6th-round pick of the Ravens in 2019. He bounced around the NFL for a few years as a backup, and then he started coaching last year for Penn State as the assistant quarterbacks coach. And now he's in the NFL on Joe Brady's staff. Oh, by the way, Joe Brady was on staff at Penn State when Trace McSorley was a quarterback. And so it feels like an interesting addition. There's been a lot of these quarterbacks lately that pretty good college players get a little chance in the NFL, and then the next thing you know, they're on this coaching fast track, like a Davis Webb or Kevin O'Connell or Sean Mannion. There's a bunch of these guys across the league. And maybe Trace McSorley will be the next one. Feels like a good addition to the offensive staff as an assistant. And maybe you add a talented member to your coaching staff and see where it goes. So I thought that was a good one. All right, folks, there you have it. Connor McGovern not looking like he's going to be back. The Bills have a lot to figure out, but Sam Franklin is back. Other needs on special teams. And then, of course, Trace McSorley now part of this coaching staff. We have a lot more coming this week for you. We'll have Bill Squad on Thursday. And then Friday will be my mock offseason. You'll get my full plan for creating cap space, signing free agents, a mock draft, a roster projection, all this stuff, a 2-part series that'll drop on Friday. It'll go back to back, so you make sure you listen to them in the right order. But that's coming the end of the week to get us through the weekend and into the legal tampering period and new league year next year. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.